Hello again, Anna here from Rainier Books. This is my third video that I plan to release today. Let's see if I can make it, if I can record it, if I can edit it in time, and if I can put it up on YouTube, on BookTube. This is about literature, and tonight I'm sitting at home, and last week I found out by chance there's so many literary prizes, so many awards that go on Twitter, go on BookTube, go on Facebook, and that happen in the real world, of course. And last week was dominated, of course, by the announcement of the long list of the Women's Prize for Fiction. 16 beautiful novels were announced by the foundation, by the jury that is led by Bernardine Evaristo. But also another very, very interesting prize was announced last week that I didn't know of. And this is the Short Story Prize that was founded by the Chisholm Foundation in the United States in 2004. And the Short Story Prize, of course, goes to an author for the best collection of short stories in the last year. I saw this on Twitter because I follow a bunch of authors that I have read. One of the authors that I've read this year, actually, she published her book last year, was on the shortlist of the National Book Award. She got this award, the Short Story Prize, which is called the Story Prize, actually. The prize went to Deesha Phyliaw for her beautiful collection, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, published by University of Virginia Press in the US last year. An amazing book. But there were 20 more books on a long list, 20 more collections of short stories that I took a closer look at. And I don't want to present them all, that would be a super long video. But I picked 10 out of these 20 collections that I thought were super interesting. And I will order 2 or 3. They're all super expensive still, but because they were published in the US and they're not published yet in the UK. You can get them in Europe, but as always, when you buy books that are published in the States, they are a little bit more expensive. So I will start with 2 or 3 collections that I haven't decided on yet, but I have 10 for you tonight that I want to present, that I want to share with you, and that might get you interested in more short stories. So let's finally get this video started. So as I said, there are 20 titles on the long list, and there were even more because Deesha Phyliaw was apparently on the long list. But I'm going to speak about 10 titles that I found as well on the nominations list of the Story Prize that I really thought were interesting collections. So number 1 is Visit America by Matthew Baker, published by Henry Holt and Company on August 4 of 2020. The citizens of Plainfield, Texas have had it with a broke-down United States. So they vote to secede, rename themselves America in memory of their former country, and happily set themselves up to receive tourists from their closest neighbor, America. Couldn't happen? Well, it might, and so it goes in the 13 stories in Matthew Baker's brilliantly illuminating, incisive and heartbreaking collection, Why Visit America? The book opens with a seemingly traditional story in which the speculative element is extremely minimal. The narrator has a job that doesn't actually exist, a story that wouldn't seem much out of place in a collection of literary realism. From there, the stories get progressively stranger. A young man breaks the news to his family that he's going to transition from an analog body to a digital existence. A young woman abducts a child, her own, from a government-run childcare facility. A man returns home after committing a great crime, his sentence being that his memory, his entire life, is wiped clean. As the book moves from universe to universe, the stories cross between different American genres from Bildungsroman to rom-com, Western to dystopian, including fantasy, horror, erotica, and a noir detective mystery. Read together, these parallel universe stories create a composite portrait of the true nature of the United States and through the looking-glass reflection of who we are as a country. The next one is probably one of the titles that I'm going to order. It's a big favorite. Crooked Hallelujah by Kelly Jo Ford, published by Growth Press on July 14 in 2020, because I'm generally interested all the way in Native American literature. It's 1974 in the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and 15-year-old Justine grows up in a family of tough, complicated, and loyal women, presided over by her mother Lula and Granny. After Justine's father abandoned the family, Lula became a devout member of the Holiness Church, a community that Justine at times finds stifling and terrifying. But Justine does her best as a devoted daughter until an act of violence sends her on a different path forever. Crooked Hallelujah tells the stories of Justine, a mixed-blood Cherokee woman, and her daughter Renee as they move from eastern Oklahoma's Indian country in the hopes of starting a new, more stable life in Texas amid the oil bust of the 1980s. However, life in Texas isn't easy, and Renee feels unmoored from her family in Indian country. Against the vivid backdrop of the Red River, we see their struggle to survive in a world of unreliable men and near-biblical natural forces, like wildfires and tornadoes, intent on stripping away their connections to one another and their very ideas of home. In lush and empathic prose, Kelly Jo Ford depicts what this family of proud, stubborn Cherokee women sacrifices for those they love amid larger forces of history, religion, class, and culture. This is a big-hearted and ambitious novel of the powerful bonds between mothers and daughters by an exquisite and rare new talent by the name of Kelly Jo Ford. The third title I got interested in is The Prince of Mournful Thoughts by Caroline Kim, published by the University of Pittsburgh Press on October 6 of 2020. Exploring what it means to be human through the Korean diaspora, Caroline Kim's stories feature many voices. From a teenage girl in 1980s America to a boy growing up in the middle of the Korean War, to an immigrant father struggling to be closer to his adult daughter, or to a suburban housewife whose equilibrium depends upon a therapy robot. Each character must face the less than ideal circumstances and find a way to overcome them without losing themselves. Language often acts as a barrier as characters try, fail, and momentarily succeed in connecting with each other. With humor, insight, and curiosity, Kim's wide-ranging stories explore themes of culture, communication, travel, and family. Ultimately, what unites these characters across time and distance is their longing for human connection and a search for the place or people that feel like home. The next collection is a collection that I had in my recommendations. You know, every month I do this video, new books in, and then I add the month and the year. And I haven't done this for March of 2021 yet. I know that I haven't done it. I want to do it more into the month, probably at the end of the month, when all the books that have been published in March are more or less on the table. But this book was in my July collection of 2020. And this is Cool for America by Andrew Martin, published by Farrar, Strauss, and Giroux on July 7 of 2020. The collection is bookended by The Misadventures of Leslie, a young woman first introduced in early work who moves from New York to Missoula, Montana, to try to draw herself out of a lingering depression, and over the course of the book gains painful insight into herself through a series of intense friendships and relations. Other stories follow young men and women alone and in couples, pushing hard against and often crashing into the limits of their abilities as writers and partners. In one story, two New Jersey siblings with substance abuse problems relapse together on Christmas Eve. In another, a young couple tries to make sense of an increasingly unhinged veterinarian who seems to be tapping deliberately or otherwise into the unspoken troubles between them. And tales about characters as they age from punk shows and benders to book clubs and art museums, the promise of community acts, at least temporarily, as a stay against despair. Running throughout Cool for America is the character's yearning for transcendence through art, the hope that maybe the perfect or even just the good enough sentence can finally make things right. Number 5, The World Doesn't Work That Way, But It Could, by Xyta Maya Murray, published by University of Nebraska Press last year. The gripping, thought-provoking stories in Xyta Maya Murray's latest collection find their inspiration in the headlines. Here, ordinary people negotiate tentative paths through wildfire, mass shootings, bureaucratic incompetence, and heedless government policies with vicious impacts on the innocent and helpless. A nurse volunteers to serve in catastrophe-stricken Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria and discovers that her skill and compassion are useless in the face of stubborn governmental inertia. An Environmental Protection Agency employee whose agricultural worker parents died after long exposure to a deadly pesticide finds herself forced to find justifications for reversing regulations that had earlier banned the chemical. A Department of Education employee in a dystopic future America visits a highly praised charter school and discovers the horrific consequences of academic failure. A transgender trainer of beauty pageant contestants takes on a beautiful Latina for the Miss USA pageant and brings her to perfection and the brink of victory, only to discover that she has a fatal secret. The characters in these stories grapple with the consequences of frightening attitudes and policies pervasive in the United States today. The stories explore not only our distressing human capacity for moral numbness in the face of evil, but also reveal our surprising stores of compassion and forgiveness. These brilliantly conceived and beautifully written stories are troubling yet irresistible mirrors of our time. Sleepovers by Ashleigh, Bryant, Phillips, published by the Hub City Writers Project. This collection takes us to a forgotten corner of the rural South, full of cemeteries, soybean fields, fishing holes, and duck-through gas stations. We meet a runaway teen, a mattress salesman, feral kittens, an elderly bachelorette wearing a horsehair locket, and a little girl named after Shania Twain. Here, time and memory circle above Phillips's characters like vultures and angels as they navigate the only landscape they've ever known. Corn reaches for rain, deer run blindly, and no matter how hungry or hurt, some forgotten hymn is always remembered. The literary love child of Carson McCullers and John the Baptist, Ashleigh Bryant Phillips' imagination is profoundly original and private, writes Rebecca Lee. Sleepovers marks the debut of a fearless new voice in fiction, and she was the winner of the 2019 C. Michael Curtis Short Story Book Prize, selected by Lauren Groff. Number 7, Last One Out, Shut Off the Lights by Stephanie Soileau, published by Little Brown and Company. Last One Shut Off the Lights is an evocative portrait of the last chance towns of southwest Louisiana, where oil development, industrial pollution, dying wetlands, and the ever-present threat of devastating hurricanes have eroded their inhabitants' sense of home. These 11 piercing stories feature indelible characters struggling to find a foothold in a world that is forever washing out from under them. People who must reckon with their ambivalence about belonging to a place so continually in flux. In a collection whose resonant echoes abound, we meet a reluctant teenage mother who stows her baby in a closet to steal a night out, a spiteful retiree who sabotages his neighbor in the wake of a hurricane, a Pentecostal singer in a children's theater company who confronts the cultish leader of her troupe, a community of elderly Cajuns who conspire with a family of Sudanese immigrants to hide an escaped cow from the authorities, and a desperate young woman who tries to drag her mother to Mexico for surgery, determined to save his life and her own. As Lauren Groff did for the state of Florida in her recent collection, Florida, Stephanie Soileau demonstrates that Louisiana is as much a state of mind as it is a place on the map. A love letter to the Cajun language, life rhythms, and customs that still make the region unique. Last One Out, Shut Off the Lights is also a powerful reminder of the treacherous escape routes that bedevil anyone longing to leave home and the traps that remain for those who desire to return. Probably the second one I'm going to get, right? This sounds ultimately intriguing and ultimately interesting. You Will Never Be Forgotten by Mary South, published by FSG Originals. An architect draws questionable inspiration from her daughter's birth defect. A content moderator for the world's biggest search engine who spends her days culling videos of beheadings and suicides turns from stalking her rapist online to following him in real life. At a camp for recovering internet trolls, a sensitive misfit goes missing. A wounded mother raises the second incarnation of her child. In You Will Never Be Forgotten, Mary South explores how technology can both collapse our relationships from within and provide opportunities for genuine connection. Formally inventive, darkly absurdist, savagely critical of the increasingly fraught cultural climates we inhabit, These 10 stories also find hope in fleeting interactions and moments of tenderness. They reveal our grotesque selfishness and our intense need for love and acceptance and the psychic pain that either shuts us off or allows us to discover our deepest reaches of empathy. This incendiary debut marks the arrival of a perceptive, idiosyncratic, instantly recognizable voice in fiction, one that could only belong to Mary South. Number 9, A House as a Body by Shruti Swami, published by Algonquin Books. Dreams collide with reality, modernity with antiquity, and myth with identity in the 12 arresting stories of A House as a Body. In Earthly Pleasures, a young painter living alone in San Francisco begins a secret romance with one of India's biggest celebrities, and desire and ego are laid bare. In A Simple Composition, a husband's professional crisis leads to his wife's discovery of a dark, ecstatic joy. And in the title story, an exhausted mother watches, hypnotized by fear, as a California wildfire approaches her home. Immersive and assured, provocative and probing, these are stories written with the edge and precision of a knife blade. Set in the United States and India, they reveal small but intense moments of beauty, pain, and power that contain the world. A House as a Body introduces a bold and original voice in fiction from a writer at the start of a stellar career. And finally, last but not least, my selection is Verge by Lidia Yuknovich, Riverhead Books, the publisher. Lidia Yuknovich is a writer of rare insight into the jagged boundaries between pain and survival. Her characters are scarred by the unchecked hungers of others and themselves, yet determined to find salvation within lives that can feel beyond their control. In novels such as The Small Backs of Children and The Book of Joan, she has captivated readers with stories of visceral power. Now in Verge, she offers a sharp mosaic portrait of human resilience on the margins. The landscape of Verge is peopled with characters who are innocent and imperfect, wise and endangered. An 8-year-old black market medical courier, a restless lover haunted by memories of his mother, a teenage girl gazing out her attic window at a nearby prison, all of them wounded but grasping toward transcendence. Clear-eyed yet inspiring, Verge challenges us with moments of uncomfortable truth, even as it urges us to place our faith not in the flimsy guardrails of society, but in the memories held and told by our own individual bodies. And these were the 10 short story collections that I selected from the long list of the Story Prize that Deesha Phyliaw won for The Secret Lives of Church Ladies last week. I hope that you liked one of the collections. I think I will order like 2 or 3 of them. That was everything I had to say for today. Thank you very much for watching this video after the other 2 videos that I released today. I hope it wasn't too much, but I did a little Steve Donahue tonight, so please bear with me. And I see you again on Tuesday with another great video. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and leave a comment. Because everything that you do, everything that engages you is good for the channel, is good for me, and good for creating more content for you. Have a great evening. See you soon. Bye-bye.